right, well, good morning, Netcast. My name is Esther, and this is how I sound today, so hang in there, everybody. It's been a rough week, but God got me here, and He's going to get me through this. He got me through the first service, and I have every faith that He'll get me through the second, and then we'll pray about the third, see how that goes. All right, so we are in our fourth week on the Sermon on the Mount sermon series, and I've got a Sermon on the Mount story for you. About 30 years ago, because I'm so old, when I was in college, I studied over in Israel, actually at the University of Jerusalem, outside of the city of Jerusalem. It was super cool, like just such an incredible experience. And they would do things like take us on field trips. You know, we'd go to like Bethlehem for the day or Jericho for the day. And it was just like so cool. And one day they piled us into the vans and they took us up north to the Galilee district, where the Sea of Galilee is. And clearly we were going up a mountain because we kept getting higher and higher. And so we rode up the mountain, we were on this bus, and then they stopped, and they let us out of the bus, and I noticed two things right away. One, yes, you could see the Sea of Galilee, and it was a great view. It was a beautiful view. You could see the whole Sea of Galilee. But two, we were on a cliff. This was not really a mountain. This was a cliff. There's a picture that I have in a second that will come up. We were up there, and it was like a plateau. Okay, see? That's a cliff, right? Okay, so I immediately did this, because this is what you do in high situations. Don't ask me why, but this is what I did. And they were talking, and I was doing this the whole time. And they said, we think that this might be one of the locations where Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. And I was like, well, it's a good thing I can read the Sermon on the Mount in the Bible, because if I was there, like, this is what I would have been doing. It would have been so embarrassing the whole time. And then they said, we've got a surprise for you. We're going to hike down that cliff. We're going to hike down. There's like this really cool trail that's got little like handholds carved into the rock face and like little metal ladders. And I was like, look at me. No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. And in fact, my entire class was like, wow, we're so excited. They said, this is going to, sort of get into like what it was like to have been there during the Sermon on the Mount. And I was like, the only thing I'm getting into is the van. I'm getting into the van, and I will meet you back down at the bottom. And that is what I did. Every single person in that class, including the professors, down that cliff face, not me. And I know this because 3 years ago, our daughter, who is also at the same college I went to, Wheaton College, she did the same program. And this is her picture. We would wake up in the mornings because of the time difference and learn what she had done that day. And the morning that we got this picture, she said, guess what we did today? We did the coolest hike ever. We were like mountain goats. We had like these little like handholds and ladders, and it was so steep and it was so cool. And I was like, oh. For heaven's sakes, I was like, yeah, the Sermon on the Mount, I know. But here's what you have to remember. When I was there 30 years ago, we would write down in our journal when we got back to our dorm, like, today I was at the location where they think the Sermon on the Mount was delivered. And then we would send our photos when we got back to America to CVS, our film. And like weeks later, CVS would give us like tangible pictures that you hold, and we'd flip through them, blurry, 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 blurry. Oh, look at that. And then try to match our photo to our notes. And so it's possible mistakes were made. Because Abby said, this isn't the Sermon on the Mount. Because remember, she would take a picture, her phone would like automatically geolocate her. She could take her notes and like zip, 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 and it was all in real time. She said, no. My notes say that this is the place where when Jesus revealed himself in the temple, the crowds got angry and they wanted to throw him off a cliff, but he miraculously passed through the crowd. It's like, yeah, that's probably more likely what that location was. And then when I was working on this sermon, I opened my study Bible, and it's an archaeology study Bible, and I have a second picture. It had a picture. Yep, this is where they think the Sermon on the Mount was probably delivered. Like, I could have stood upright if I was there. Like, that would have been no problem at all. That's easy peasy. All right, so that's my Sermon on the Mount story. We are today in Matthew 5, 21 through 26. I'm going to read part of our passage now and part of it later. So this is Jesus speaking. You have heard it said that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the fires of hell. Okay, so I see a lot of you have Bibles and physical Bibles, and in the Sermon on the Mount, the translators have provided for us subdivisions, so they help us understand where we are in the Sermon on the Mount. What's the subdivision for today's text? Anger. Well, you're in for a treat, because guess what kind of person I am? I'm a chronically irritated person at all times. And irritation is just a hop, skip, and a jump to anger. I made a little list of things that have irritated me, like in the past, 24 hours, maybe a week, just to get us going, just so that those of you who don't know me can get to know me just a little bit. Okay, for starters, insomnia. I had it last night. I get insomnia about 2 to 3 times a week. God designed us to sleep. We have to sleep to live. Why? Why do we get insomnia? I lie there at night. Why, God? Why? Makes me so cranky. Okay, Riley, my daughter. I get up. I make lunches. I've been making lunches for 20 years. When I get up in the morning and I make a Southwest chicken salad and I layer it with the chicken on the bottom so the sogginess stays there, and then the lettuce, and then the layer of beans, and then I put the croutons in a zippy bag to keep them dry, and I put the dressing in a special dressing container, and that lunch comes back to me, and it has not been eaten, that makes me irritated right there. Les was like, you're going to mention the cup holders, right? Cup holders. I drove a minivan for a really, really long time, and I loved it because it had so many cup holders. I could have my coffee and I could have my water. But then we aged out. The kids grew up and we got a real person, a grown-up car. I hated it. I could have one drink. It was like this big, like some European soda. Who drinks that? I basically was going to die of dehydration driving this dumb luxury car. I couldn't even, I was going to just perish. Do you know what I did after 1 year? I traded it in for a minivan. And now I can have my Nalgene and my coffee and my backup coffee, and if I have a friend and they want to have a drink and a coffee, they can. It makes me irritated. Flight delays, traffic on the Mass Pike, construction on 114 in the summer. Why? There are 2 days. There's 2 days in Boston that it's pleasant to live here, that anybody wants to live in Boston, and those are the days that you're going to put 114 under construction. I just want to get from A to B. I want to get to the beach. I want to go from west to east, and it's under construction those 2 days. Okay, last one. The entire Merritt Parkway in Connecticut. Anybody drive on the Merritt Parkway? I know, right? Nothing makes me 0 to 60 like driving on the Merritt Parkway. Why? Because you're not going 60. Not ever. You might get 20. I don't know. When I have insomnia, I design entire disaster movies like how to take out the Merritt Parkway. Asteroid strike, sinkhole. So that is just to let you know a little bit about me and my chronic irritation issues, and that's not even that's not the real stuff. I know a lot of you out here, and there is a lot going on in your lives, and there are some actual real and appropriate, and we'll talk about this, reasons to be angry. There are times and places where anger might be the right emotion for a time. Loved ones who are hurt, who are hurting, injustices, giant big systems that are too big to take on, taxes, insurance, healthcare, immigration. You just get stuck in this cycle of phone calls and you're just trying to talk to a live person. You just can't. Power that hurts and abuses and takes advantage of those not in power. All the illnesses, cancer, dementia, death. It's okay to be angry about some of these things. We'll see that. Violence against women. Violence against women that's been mishandled by the church makes me angry. Poverty, addiction. The point is, I am the poster child for somebody who should probably not be preaching a sermon on anger. I should be sitting out there, except this is Netcast, and we believe in the grace of the gospel. So I hope you know that the people that are on stage often struggle with the very things that you struggle with, and this is a sermon for me as much as it is a sermon for you. We all struggle with anger, and I am the chief offender. I hope you see that now. So this sermon series so far, Travis opened us 4 weeks ago talking about the Beatitudes in his lightning introduction and Beatitudes all in one sermon. And in that sermon, he said the Beatitudes are who we are. They are descriptors of who we are as followers of Jesus. They are not prescriptive. They're not something nice you should think about doing. They are who we are. They are our identity, okay? And then Matt followed talking about salt and light and said that's our purpose. If we know our identity, what's our purpose? And it was salt and light, taking the gospel of Jesus Christ out into the world. That is your purpose in whatever field that you're doing that in. And then last week and this week and for the next few weeks, we'll be talking about expectations. So we understand who we are, what we're supposed to be doing, and now Jesus is going to tell us how we are to do it. And today we're going to see how God expects us, our expectations, to live with respect to anger and the gospel. I'm going to break our passage down into 3 sections because that's just how I roll, and I'm going to use mountain motifs to help me stay organized. I'm going to talk about what God said in the Old Testament using Mount Sinai, and then we're going to talk about what Jesus says to us in the New Testament on the Sermon on the Mount. And then lastly, we're going to say, what do both the Old Testament and the New Testament mean for where we're going, where we're headed, and for that we're going to use Mount Zion, okay? So first up, what does God say in the Old Testament? Back to verse 21. Jesus opens our section by saying, "You have heard it said that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.'" Jesus here is quoting the 6th commandment of the 10 commandments. And even if you didn't grow up in church land, you've heard of the 10 commandments. It's always like in the news, should we hang them in the state house, should we not, whatever, the 10 commandments. But why is Jesus calling out one of the 10 commandments? If you are somebody who's maybe reading through the Bible in the year plan or doing some sort of daily Bible reading, you've probably read a bunch of other laws in the Old Testament. There's lots of laws. There's laws in Genesis and Deuteronomy. If you've been in Leviticus, you're like, whoa, there's a lot of laws there. Lots of laws in Leviticus, Numbers. So why is Jesus calling out one of the 10 commandments? So we just have to take a quick little step back, and those of you who have heard me before know I love to do this, but it'll be fast today, I promise, and understand the story of the Bible. The Bible, one story, starts in Genesis, it ends in Revelation. It is all one story, and there's one main character, and it's not you, right? It's not you. You are not the main character of your life. You're just not. God is. And the story of the Bible, the whole plot of the Bible, the entire narrative of the Bible is about God making a way for you to be back in relationship with him, because when he created us in the garden, all the way over here in Genesis, he created us in his image. Think of a mirror. We are meant to reflect God. God is holy. God is perfect. We are designed and created to reflect God perfectly and holy. But we broke the image. When Adam and Eve ate the fruit in the garden, they broke the image. That brokenness is sin. That's what we call sin. And the rest of the Bible is about God trying to show people how they can be back in relationship with him to restore. God will restore that image through ultimately the person of Jesus Christ, his son. But in the Old Testament, this story is primarily seen through God's relationship with the people, the nation of Israel. Actually, a country, a people group called Israel. Just like we're in America, they were in Israel. And God gave them 3 different kinds of laws to allow them to know how to function, how to thrive, how to be in this relationship with God. 3 different kinds of laws. The first is civil, then ceremonial, and then moral. The civil laws are like our modern day, stoplights, stop signs, FDA food regulations, property taxes, that kind of stuff. It's just sort of how to live, how to be a nation, how to be living and thriving in America today. You follow the laws. That's what the civil laws were. There were things like what to do if you've got mold on the wall of your house, or you accidentally kill your neighbor's oxen, which I don't really understand that law, because I don't even think I could kill an ox, intentionally in the best of my time. I don't know how I would kill an ox, let alone accidentally kill an ox. But anyway, that was a civil law. And the civil laws for the nation of Israel don't apply to us. We are not called to keep the civil laws of Israel, because we have to keep the civil laws of America. The ceremonial laws, the second set of laws, is more important, and here's why. The relationship between Israel and God was broken, just like the relationship between all humanity and God was broken. And God gave them the ceremonial laws to show them, you have a big problem. And the problem is your brokenness, the sinfulness between God and man, and that the relationship was completely broken, and there was a debt owed between the people who had sinned against God, and a payment was owed. And God set this whole ceremonial sacrificial system of animal sacrifice, the oxes and the bulls and the lambs, to show the people, you need to do something. You've got to do something. There is a payment due to God. And they were given this whole system, the priests, the feasts, the tabernacle, all of that was to show them their great need to pay for the brokenness in their hearts in order to be in relationship with God. But it was never going to be enough. It was both going to show them their need and point them to the one who would be enough, and that's Jesus Christ. So we, in 2025, are not called to keep the ceremonial law, because Jesus has kept it for us, and we live on this side of the cross, on this side of the resurrection. But there's that third type of law, the moral law, and that's what Jesus is referring to when he says, do not murder. And the moral law is binding, always. It's not like when God gave the 10 Commandments to Moses, say it was on a Tuesday, that on Monday you were allowed to break the 10 Commandments. The 9th commandment is do not lie. It's not like on Monday you could lie, but then on Tuesday God gave you the 10 Commandments and now you can't lie. That's not what it was like. You've never been allowed to lie. Lying is never part of who we should be. It wasn't okay to lie in the garden. It wasn't okay for Israel to lie in the Old Testament. It wasn't okay for people to lie in the time of Jesus. It's not okay to lie now. It will never be okay to lie in the future glory. Why? Because the moral law points us to who God is and what his character is. And God is truth. In God, there's no deception. There is no dishonesty. There's no lying. And we are called to reflect that. We are called to reflect God's nature. And so the moral law is always binding. We don't have to keep the civil law. Jesus has completed the ceremonial law, but we are called to keep the moral law. And just like we saw with the lying one, we fail. We are unable to keep the moral law. We do not reflect God's image perfectly because we are broken and we are sinful. And so when Jesus is referring to the moral law and he's saying, you have heard it say, do not murder, he's setting them up. He's setting them up to say, you fail that, and guess what? It's going to get even worse than you think. Our childhood pastor was named Jack Miller, and he used to say, cheer up, Christians, you're worse off than you think. And it's true. That brings me to our second section here, which is what does Jesus say? And what does Jesus say here in the New Testament about this law in the Old Testament? Well, on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, verse 22, so you've heard it say, do not murder, or you'll be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Do you hear that? The same words. It's the same thing. Do not murder, and you'll be liable. Do not be angry, or you'll be liable. It's the same thing. Jesus equating anger to murder. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the fires of hell. This is Jesus, as Matt often says, raising the bar. He's giving you expectations. What does it look like to be a follower in the kingdom of God? This is what it looks like. Don't murder, and murder is the same as anger. Now, I want to pause for a second and just quickly talk about the difference between righteous anger and sinful anger, which I said I would do earlier. Because there is a time and a place where it's appropriate to be angry when things happen. God gets angry in the Bible. When does God get angry in the Bible? He gets angry when there is sin. God is a holy God. He can't be in the presence of sin. Sin makes God angry. Jesus gets angry in the New Testament when they misuse the temple, God's house. They misuse it. Jesus gets angry at the Pharisees. Mark 3:5 says that Jesus looked at the Pharisees and he was angry. Why? Because they were teaching a false gospel, and that is sin. There's a time and a place to be angry. And I know a lot of you. I've heard a lot of your stories. I know that things have happened to you that are wrong and sinful, and it is appropriate to be angry. There is righteous anger in these situations. An easy one, child abuse. Never okay, always appropriate to be angry about it. Always appropriate to be angry about that. It does not align with God's heart and will. Injustices, trafficking, modern-day slavery, addiction that destroys the family, all of it. Death, it is okay to be angry about that. It's not who we were designed for. God did not design us for death. Jesus was upset when Lazarus died, even though he knew that he was going to raise him. There are times and places when it is appropriate to be angry. Jesus is not prohibiting in this passage righteous anger. But listen, Jesus also knows your hearts. He knows my heart. I've been talking about this sermon to basically everybody I know because it intimidates me. And I was talking to my friend out in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and she has come out of an abusive marriage. And she said, I really had to work with a counselor to, first of all, realize that it was okay to be angry at what was done to me and to my children. It was wrong, and it's appropriate to be angry about it. But she said, Esther, I also know myself, and I let that anger take root, and I let it turn into bitterness. And she said, she even went on to say, and then I started wishing things and thinking things about my ex-husband that were not in line with God's will, that were not in line with the gospel. Jesus knows that we step out of righteous anger into sinful anger like that. And you have to be honest with yourself. You know if there's righteous anger and a reason to be angry, that's appropriate. You also know when you step out of it into sinful anger. What is sinful anger? Well, the Bible has a lot to say about anger. If you're over in the Foundations of Faith class with us, you know that I'm all about having a good study Bible. I hope some of you have a study Bible. So what you could do is you could do a quick word search on anger. What does the Bible have to say about anger? One of the things we do to interpret the Bible is have the Bible interpret the Bible. So we go and see, what does it say? Look up the word anger in the back and index all these verses. I'm just going to pick 3, don't worry. James 1, 19 through 21 says this. Understand, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires, so get rid of it. Humbly accept the word God has planted in your heart, for it has the power to save your souls. Do you hear that? Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Righteous anger moving into sinful anger, that's not going to produce righteousness. God's word in your heart does. Ephesians 4:30. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as God forgave you. The point is, we can be kind, we can be compassionate, we can be forgiving, because God has done that for us. Here's one for my Avengers, of which I am one. I want to bring justice to every single situation. Psalm 37's got a word for that. Commit everything you do to the Lord. Trust him and he will help you. He will make your innocence radiate like the dawn, and the justice of your cause will shine like the noonday sun. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. Don't worry about evil people who prosper or fret about their wicked schemes. Stop being angry. Turn from your rage. Do not lose your temper. It only leads to harm. For the wicked will be destroyed, but those who trust in the Lord will possess the land. The point is, God does not need your Justice League, Guardians of the Galaxy, super special. He's got it. God's got it. God will bring ultimate and real justice to your situation. I know it doesn't always feel that way, but the Bible's pretty clear about this. Stop being angry. Turn from your rage. This is the sort of anger Jesus is equating to murder, and he's saying we will be held liable for it. He says anger, insults, name-calling. Quick quiz. They lied in the first service. Who called somebody a name on their way to church today? Thank you. Idiot cut me off. Stupid truck driver. What's wrong with that barista? Has she even ever made coffee before? This is tea. What is this? It's like watered-down drivel. Just a few examples. I've thought a lot about this the past couple weeks, you guys, trying to figure this out. Like, what is underneath all of this for me specifically? And you need to think about this for you because you probably have different drivers. But I know that for myself, I get angry when somebody seeks to harm myself, or more importantly, somebody I love, like my children or my husband, or when people's actions or system actions make me feel a loss of perceived control. I know right here in my head, I promise I do know that I don't actually control everything, but if you know me, you know that that is not how I live my life. I live as if I am in control of the traffic and the weather and my schedule. And how do you think I felt this week when I wrote, do not book 3 days this week, and I was laid on the couch with a fever and could not move? I was so irritated. I booked out 3 days and I have a fever. When I feel out of control, I get angry. Our family is a family that skis, and I'm just setting this up so you have context. We are good skiers. We know what we're doing. We're not beginners. We've been skiing our entire lives. We've raised our children to ski. Les and I grew up skiing. We've skied out west. We've skied on the East Coast. We got it. We are good skiers. Les and I went skiing about a month ago up at Loon. We hadn't been to Loon in a couple years because winter sports. Just winter sports. That's all I got to say about that. It ruins your lives. Basketball and volleyball. I'm looking at you. AAU sports. Who schedules those? Not a mom. Anyway, things that irritate me. So we were at Loon, and we hadn't been there in 2 years, and they have a new lift called the Kangamangas 8. Has anybody been up to Loon and ridden the Kangamangas 8? It's this new lift that seats 8 people, obviously, and it's like faux leather seats. It's got this shield that comes down that protects you from like the air and the wind, and it's super cool. But we hadn't ridden it yet, and so you get into like this cattle chute, and you filter down until you're a group of 8. And it was just Les and I. So we were in the middle of this group of 8. You come up to these automatic gates. They open up. You go out onto this little magic carpet. It rolls you along. And then the 8-person lift comes down. It swoops behind you. It picks you up and sends you up the mountain. And that's how it is supposed to work. So it's all very cool and jazzy. So we got up to our gates. We were right in the middle of this group of 8. We didn't know the other people. The gates sprung open. We went out. We just, went down the little thing onto the magic carpet. We're going along, and we looked over, ready for the chair to come behind us and scoop us up. But instead, the giant 8-person lift was coming directly at us. And there was nothing we could do. We were on this magic carpet. It's not like we could ski away or anything. There was no snow. It was a magic carpet. It was literally coming at us like a bowling ball, and we were the pins. And it just kept coming. Now, the people to Les's right, I think one was a kid, and the other one stood. They managed to sort of do this, but the chair just bowled Les right over. I mean, he's so tall. He's back there. There was no way that he could duck and dodge out of this thing. It just took him out. It just pulled, skis and poles all over the place. He went down hard. He crashed into me. I managed to sort of do one of these moves, and I didn't fall, but I took out the lady to my left. Now, the lady to my left was wearing white snow pants and a matchy-matchy puffer little crop situation that was white. I'll come back to her. She fell down, and she wiped out all these people over here. I was standing like the lone survivor, thinking I'm like the hero of an action movie, stop the lift, and they did stop the lift, but not because of me, because there's a pile of bodies on the ground. So whatever. I was like, wow, I don't know, are we gonna get a free drink from Loon? Clearly something's super wrong with the timing of their lift. And so, they came over, they had to help us up, because you can't really get up by yourself when you're on a magic carpet and you're tangled up in skis. We got up, the thing comes around. The lady leans forward in front of me and says to Les, the lady in white, and she says, didn't you know that you have to pause before the gates open? And I was like, here we are, we're all in it together. It's interesting. That's interesting. Really? Seriously? You have to pause? That doesn't seem to make any sense. And she just lost it. She just went crazy. She's like, you actually have to pause. You have to pause. You don't know that? When the gates open, you can't just go out there like that. You have to wait. Otherwise, you knock everybody over and you do this entire thing. And right? Yeah. Well, so, little matchy-matchy lady here. And I was furious. I was so angry. I wanted to shove her off the thing into a snowbank where she would disappear because she's wearing all white. Who wears all white? So angry. And then the thing came and scooped us up, and we had to awkwardly ride up the mountain. I was angry because she was mean to Les. Side note, he can take care of himself. And rather clearly, I felt and was out of control. It's a very small example, but I did want to shove her off a ski lift into a snowbank. We get that murder is bad, because if we all murdered somebody, there'd be nobody left on the planet, right? But what is Jesus saying about anger? Why is Jesus equating anger to murder? What is he saying about insults and name-calling? What's going on there? My ESV Study Bible has a footnote about this, and it says, anger is an attack on God's image bearer. You don't have to be a follower of Jesus to be an image bearer. Every single person that walks on this planet is an image bearer of God. When you are angry with anybody on the planet, you are attacking God's image bearer. It says it's a dangerous and destructive attack on one's character and identity. We are trying to bring somebody down in value, maybe not gone from this planet, but down, less than, which implies that in some way we are better. We can control the situation better. And I know that for me, my anger in dumb situations and in big situations is rooted in not trusting God. I think I can do a better job with whatever the situation is, protecting, preserving, or my favorite, bringing justice. I can do a better job, and I'm going to hold on to it so tightly until I accomplish what I set out to do. If you're a Lord of the Rings person, it's like Gollum and the ring. He wanted that ring, and he got it. But when he held on to that ring so tightly, what happened? It controlled him. And when you hold on to anger in your life, whether it's at a person or a situation or a very real injustice that has been done to you, it will control you. Tim Keller says in Counterfeit Gods, when anything in life is an absolute requirement for your happiness and self-worth, it is essentially an idol, something you are actually worshiping. When such a thing is threatened, your anger is absolute. Your anger is actually the way the idol keeps you in its service, in its chains. Therefore, if you find that despite all the efforts to forgive, your anger and bitterness cannot subside, you may need to look deeper and ask, what am I defending? What is so important that I cannot live without it? What are you defending? What is so important in your life that you cannot live without it? Is it a situation that you just can't let go of? Is it a relationship that you know is toxic and harmful, but you can't let go of it? Is it a job, a degree? Is it bringing justice to something that you've been just harboring for all these years? Listen, there's only one thing you can't live without, and that is the gospel. There's only one person you can't live without, and that is Jesus Christ. And when you live for Jesus, with Jesus, in Jesus as new creations, you will live in your true identity that Travis talked about in the first sermon from the Beatitudes. You will be a peacemaker. That's the opposite of anger. You will be merciful. That's the opposite of anger. You will be meek. Travis said meek is power controlled. Anger is power lashing out. It's the opposite of anger. And that means when we are angry, and only you can know when it's sinful anger, not righteous anger, you need to immediately take action with that. Last week, Matt said, God grants righteousness. He never excuses unrighteousness. You need to immediately take action, which leads us to our final section of our passage, looking forward to Mount Sinai. There's hope. And what Jesus says we are to do with this anger, how we are to act, and why. So our last few verses, Matthew 5, verses 23 through 26, Jesus goes on to say, so if you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift before the altar and first be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard and you put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Jesus calls us to not be angry, but when we are, because we do mess up, we are sinful, we are to deal with it. And he says, in this case, with anger, we are to deal with it through reconciliation. Now, I don't know what that may look like for you. It might be a relationship with a person that needs to be reconciled. It might be. You might need to go have coffee or meet with them. I don't know, texting's a little tacky, probably not a text. Maybe it's with a situation where you need to deal with anger that you've let take root. Maybe the situation actually is unjust and wrong and harmful, but you've let that anger slide into sinful anger. Maybe you need to meet with a small group, the prayer team up here. But Jesus says we are to come to terms and we are to do it quickly. Why? Why are we to come to terms quickly? It goes back to the second set of laws, the ceremonial laws. God told the nation of Israel, you have a massive problem, and I'm going to show you through this whole system. You need to do something. You've got to do something to pay that debt. Hebrews 10 says it like this, and this is from the New Living Translation. It says, the old system under the law of Moses was only a shadow, a dim preview of the good things to come, not the good things themselves. The sacrifices under that system were repeated again and again, year after year, but they were never able to provide perfect cleansing for those who came to worship. Instead, those sacrifices actually reminded them of their sins year after year. For it is not possible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. For God's will was for us to be made holy by the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once for all time. Why do we need to reconcile? Why do we need to let go of our anger and do it quickly? Because Jesus has reconciled us to God. Jesus has made peace between us and God, and we are created in his image, and we are called to do likewise. We have been given new lives, new identities. That's what the Beatitudes say in our first section. So we need to live that way. And when you're angry, you need to repent. You need to reconcile and go follow Jesus. And when you're angry, do it again. Repent, reconcile, go follow Jesus again and again and again. Because look at our final verse. Jesus says, truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Listen, if you're not following Jesus today, you need to know that there is a judge, and it is God. God is the judge. And when he sees you with your anger or any of the brokenness, he does declare us guilty because there is a debt owed against the holy God. And we cannot be freed from that judgment, from that debt, until we have paid every penny, and we cannot do it. But Jesus has. That's what the ceremonial law points us to. My favorite hymn is It Is Well With My Soul. The third verse says, my sin, oh the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Oh, my soul. On Mount Sinai, it was forbidden. You couldn't even touch the mountain when God was giving the law. You couldn't touch it or you would die. You could touch the Sermon on the Mount. You could hike on it. You could even have touched Jesus if you were there back then. But the people that were there, their hearts were still broken. Their hearts were still full of anger, image-bearing destruction. Only Jesus lives the perfect life that we do not. Only Jesus is able to make us fully whole. And he says that someday we are going to a place where this will not be the constant struggle in our lives anymore. And that place is often in the Bible referred to as Mount Zion. Hebrews continues in chapter 12. You have not come to a physical mountain, to a place of flaming fire, darkness, gloom, and a whirlwind, as the Israelites did at Mount Sinai. For they heard a trumpet blast and a voice so terrible that they begged God to stop speaking. They staggered back under God's command. No, you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to countless angels in a joyful gathering. You have come to the assembly of God's firstborn children, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God himself, who is the judge. Here's your judge, God the judge over all things. You have come to Jesus, the one who mediates the new covenant between God and people. We will fail, but Jesus does not. We are sinful, but Jesus is holy. We are angry and we murder in our hearts, but Jesus gives us his perfect heart. And your identity, if you follow Jesus, is now in him. And Jesus has paid for that anger, every single penny. And when God sees you, he sees the life and heart of Jesus. So we can live in our true identity. Don't let anger control your life, but follow Jesus. Amen.